A major winter storm is heading to Arkansas and Oklahoma for your Tuesday, likely to drop a lot of snow in the Sooner State and Green Country, and then in western Arkansas. I'm 5 News Chief Meteorologist Matt Standridge. We want to give you the latest information that we're seeing this evening, less than 24 hours before the snow is likely to fall. Temperatures are everything in this forecast. Notice we've got all the temperatures across Arkansas and eastern Oklahoma. Notice how they're all above freezing. We're going to be getting most of our snow still above the freezing mark. We're still able to get that snowflake through the warm air. The temperatures that are above freezing, they only go a couple hundred feet. You go a little bit higher, they're all below freezing. So that's where you're making your snowflakes, and they should be able to just barely survive through these layers. And that's really crucial to figure out when you go from a mix over to snow. I want to show you Futurecast what it's looking like this evening. Overall, before we get into it, the storm just looks bigger overall. That low pressure system, boy, is it wrapping up. It brings in that moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. So it's not so much that the storm is delayed or it's moving in faster. It's just bigger. And that's helping to give us bigger snowfall totals as well. All right, so let's walk through this. This is noon on Tuesday. Eastern Arkansas, we're pretty much dry. You go back to the west, lots of rain coming in. However, some of the mountains, in the Boston Mountains, and then some of the higher terrain and parts of the Ouachita's too, they're west of Kavanaugh Hill, we could start to make over that transition to snow. But I think a lot of us, right around lunchtime, we're getting some rain, a couple snowflakes mixing in here or there. By 2, 3 o'clock, I think we're able to get cold enough in northwest Arkansas and the mountains that we're pretty much pure snow. There could be a few raindrops that mix in, but by 2, 3 o'clock, it is snow from Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, Fayetteville, and then into Greenland and West Fork. While in the River Valley, you've got to go on top of Mount Magazine, you've got to go to Poto Mountain and Sugarloaf, you've got to get closer to Kavanaugh Hill in order to get the snow. Most of us are still getting that rain, but that changes later into the afternoon. Here's a look at 6 o'clock. Much of the River Valley will have changed over to that heavy, wet snow. And in northwest Arkansas, it's been snowing for a couple hours now. Roads are going to get very treacherous, especially I-49, US 71, cruising up and down is going to be very difficult. And in the mountains, it's going to be worse. Bridges and overpasses will likely become snow covered pretty quickly. The roads that are on the ground may take an extra hour or so to start accumulating. But once it does, once you create that little layer, that little base, it is just pure snow. From then on, you're going to start racking up several inches. Later into the evening, I think most of us are getting snow. Now, you're going to notice a couple dry pockets here and there farther south towards Hot Springs, and some of those could try to work into parts of Sebastian County and LaFleur County, but overall we're getting a lot of snow. You still see this lingering pocket though, this pesky pocket of some rain over Clarksville. What's going on is that we're still probably going to get more of a wintry mix in southern Johnson County. Southern Johnson County is the only location in 5 country in western Arkansas where we don't have a winter storm warning. We do have a winter weather advisory though. We're probably going to get at least an inch or so, but the snowfall totals will be a little bit less once you get from Altus and Whitaker Village and you go east to Clarksville, Lamar, and Knoxville. Back west, though, we're cold enough. I think it's pure snow and throughout the Fort Smith Van Buren area. Closer to midnight, most of us should be snow from Little Rock west and Little Rock north. We'll even watch that rain-snow line in northeastern Arkansas, where most of the time they'll be getting rain. But then as the system is wrapping up, we could get a little bit of snow west and north of Jonesboro. But we keep that snow for hours now. I mean, by this time, we're about 10 hours of pure snow. That's where we're going to rack up quite a bit. In the River Valley, we're probably 5 or 6 hours of that heavy snow. Eventually, overnight, into early Wednesday morning, the snow will start to stop. I think by the time we get to sunrise, most of it's gone. There's probably still going to be several clouds, and there could be some passing flurries. These clouds are going to be pretty low, and they'll be spitting out a few snowflakes, but the heavy snow will be done. This all mainly takes place on Tuesday. By Wednesday, a lot drier, but that's when we wake up and we're going to see the snowfall on the ground. Here's a closer look at the timeline. In the morning, we're probably going to have some of that light rain that starts to move in from the west, but then we switch over to that wintry mix. And because we talked about those layers, when we talk about wintry mix, we're not talking about ice necessarily. We're talking about snowflakes that are falling right above our heads, and then they start to transition over to a raindrop. They slowly melt over time. And so it's kind of half melted snowflakes for this pink area. Now everyone's going to get something different. In northwest Arkansas, we start to go from that mix to snow closer to about 2 o'clock on the timeline. I went ahead and made the line to where most folks in the River Valley and northwest Arkansas, everyone together should have switched over to heavy snow. I think that takes place close to 7 o'clock. Before 7 o'clock is mainly for northwest Arkansas getting the snow, while we still have that mix throughout the River Valley. Parts of eastern Oklahoma could be already switching over to snow by 3, 4 o'clock, and even some of the mountaintops in the river valley. So we're talking Mountain Magazine, Blue Mountain, Poda Mountain, Sugarloaf, Kavanaugh Hill. You know, we're going to switch over to snow faster too. But everyone should make that transition by about 7 o'clock, and then we keep pure snow until midnight. So most of us are going to get 4 or 5 hours or so of heavy, wet snow, and then it tapers off into your early Wednesday morning. The National Weather Service has released winter storm warnings for all of 5 country, except you can see that little blank here in southern Johnson County, including Clarksville, just because our wintry mix may last a little bit longer. But these winter storm warnings extend west to Fort Sill, right over Fort Chaffee, and into Fort Leonard Wood, back north and east into Missouri. This is a large storm that's going to hit several Americans here in the U.S. heartland. Here's another way to look at the timeline with the temperatures too. To get the best snow, you've got to be right around 36 degrees in order to get that snow. I know that's not freezing, right? But like we talked about, we can still fight that warm air as long as we're not above 36. You get above 36, it's going to be tough. You can still see before, when temperatures are warmer, it's more of that wintry mix. Later into the afternoon, once we drop below that threshold, we should be pretty much pure snow. In the river valley, it will take us just a little bit longer, but I think we also make that transition over to pure snow. Here's a little bit closer view here with Futurecast. 1 o'clock, we start to transition over to snow in the mountains. We're still probably mainly rain in that wintry mix along the I-49 corridor from Fayetteville to Bentonville. River Valley, we're just rain at this point. But later into the afternoon, 3, 4 o'clock, I think we switch over to pure snow north, and then it's all about terrain. The higher up you live, you're going to start getting snow even into the middle afternoon hours in the river valley. Closer to the river, still just rain in that wintry mix. By 5, 6, 7 o'clock, we should mostly all make that transition over to snow, and then it just continues to snow overnight tonight, or over Tuesday night, and then wrapping up early Wednesday morning. All right, snowfall totals. How much is coming our way? This is a statewide view. You go north and west of Little Rock, you've got a chance for some snow. Really, we're one of the snowiest locations across the country, I think, for the storm, mainly because of our mountains. Once you get out of the Ozarks, you go back to the plains. As you go into Illinois and Indiana, they're going to get, 3, 6 inches, maybe 7 or so, but some of us could be approaching a foot, especially in the mountains. All right, so let's zoom in just a little bit closer to where the heaviest snow is going to be. You go from Benton County into Washington County, about a half foot is likely. Some of us a little bit more, and then you get into the terrain, it could be even more than that. I'm going to step off screen just for a moment. We'll be able to zoom in just a little bit more, show you what I'm talking about. So Benton County, you live right over near downtown Bentonville, from Crystal Bridges back east to Rogers over Beaver Lake. I think about a half foot is likely. That's a good ballpark number. A little bit farther west, you see the snow tapering off a bit. And that's mainly because we have the snow probably just a little bit lighter overall. The heart of the system's farther south. So the farther south you go, even though it's warmer, the snow may not be as intense farther north. So that's something to watch out for. There could be a little bit of a cutoff. So once you get west of XNA towards, Siloam Springs, north to Gravette and Decatur, maybe closer to 4 or 5 inches of snow. You head into Washington County. Boy, I tell you what, that terrain is going to be a big deal. Fayetteville, Springdale, we're probably 5 to 8, but then you get outside the cities. You go to Elkins, and then you go higher up towards some of those waterfalls that we have throughout Madison County. We're likely at least hitting 8 inches. Don't be surprised if folks in the pink area, so east and south of Fayetteville, we're getting a foot in some of these locations, especially if you start getting snow by 2 o'clock, you're easily getting a foot. Madison County, anywhere from half foot to a foot of snow. It really is all about how high up you live on these hills. Beautiful country there throughout Madison County, but it's all about terrain. Throughout Carroll County, eastern locations getting closer to a foot, so definitely 8 plus, and then back towards Eureka Springs and Berryville, that 5 to 8. Let's go a little bit farther south into the River Valley, and let's start in eastern Oklahoma. Most of us are going to get that solid 3 to 5 inches, so probably up to about a half foot. I think we'll be maybe an inch or two shy of that mark in Podo and Salisaw and Pecola, Spiro and Muldrow and Roland. Then it's all super interesting when you cross the state line and into Arkansas. That Arkansas River is going to be tough because it's going to take us a little bit longer, where we have the lowest elevations right along the river, where it may be more of a mix at first before we change over to snow. Fort Smith, I think we've got a good 3 to 5 inches expected, maybe closer to 3 to 4 inches to that side of that range. Same story in Van Buren, although just north of Van Buren, you get closer to Natural Dam, probably closer to a half foot or so. Most of Sebastian County, 3 to 5 inches. Scott County, 3 to 5 inches. Now, if you live on one of the hillsides in Scott County, we could be approaching half a foot. Logan County, same story, about 3 to 5 inches for many of us, but then you start getting north and east of Paris as you approach the Arkansas River, we're going to be down to that 1 to 3 inches. But even though you see that little nose of the trace poking into parts of Johnson County from Knoxville south and east and then into Russellville, I still think Clarksville, we should at least get an inch or two out of this storm, and 1 to 3 inches extends into Ozark. Now, Ozark is tricky. It's hard to make the maps even super more detailed, I guess you would say, because you see those ridges in Ozark. You get just on those ridges, we could even get close to 4 or 5 inches of snow. But right along the river itself, it may be a little bit tougher. So that's something to consider as you're trying to figure out what are you going to wake up to on Wednesday morning. A few more things and then we'll wrap this up. Overall, the roads are going to be wet at first, right around lunchtime. They probably won't become snow covered until later in the afternoon. Maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in northwest Arkansas, we start to become snow covered, especially bridges and overpasses. They'll become snow covered first because you can get that cold air both on top and on the bottom. The roads that are on the ground, so the majority of them, it takes us just a little bit longer. In the River Valley, we probably become snow covered close to 7, 8, 9 o'clock, and then we'll add maybe an inch or so on top of that as we get closer to midnight. But because this is also a very wet snow, there's a lot of weight to wet snow. Now, it's not as heavy as ice. When you think of ice, you think power outages. But there could be a few power outages. You put a couple inches of snowfall on some of these power lines, you'll add a couple 100 pounds to the power line as well. So just something to think about. Make sure everything is charged, ready to go into Tuesday. I went ahead and make sure all my things are charged. Make sure your vehicle is all gassed up, because if you do have to head out, some folks still have to head out no matter what the forecast says, right? But make sure you're fully fueled so that in case that you get into an accident or maybe you spin out and you're sitting on the side of the interstate waiting for someone to help you out, you want to be able to have enough fuel so that you don't, your car doesn't get cold, you don't freeze to death. But we're talking about temperatures that are too cold. But overall, you don't want to be sitting in a car that's next to 32 degrees for hours. So make sure you keep the heat on, keep the fuel tank filled. Maybe fill it up tonight before we go into Tuesday. Wednesday, things start looking a lot better. We're still going to be cold. There's still going to be snow on the ground. But those southwest winds are going to start to come back the rest of the week, and they'll quickly melt the snow. I think we're pretty much snow-free, other than a quick snow pile thanks to a dozer or a snow plow that's built up, a pocket of snow. Most of it should be gone headed in the weekend. We've got another wintry system that's possibly coming Sunday. It looks a little bit warmer, probably rain, maybe a little bit of an icy mix could be possible. This one's not going to give us ice. It's mainly just rain or snow. Makes it a lot simpler. That's good. In the River Valley, I think this system will just be too warm. Should be just rain by the weekend. So we just want to give you an update on what is coming our way. Winter storm, biggest one that we're probably going to get for this winter season, coming to our doorstep starting on Tuesday.